I had hosted many dinners in my life, birthdays, anniversaries, even the funeral reception for my late husband. But never had I prepared a meal with as much care as I did on that frosty December evening. My son Timothy was bringing home the woman he claimed was the one, a French beauty named Evelyn Lamb. At 67, I had retired from my bakery business. I had sold the chain for a respectable sum and kept the house that my husband and I had bought more than 3 decades earlier. The home was comfortable, worth more than $1.5 million, sitting on several acres. My investments, the proceeds from the bakery sale and life insurance benefits totaled nearly $7 million. It was more than enough to ensure I would never worry about bills again. Still, wealth has a way of attracting shadows. Timothy, at 38, was a brilliant man in his field of technology, yet when it came to women, he was soft-hearted and too eager to believe. I had watched him endure failed relationships with women who never bothered to learn my name. So when he told me he had met Evelyn, graceful, sophisticated, a woman who spoke several languages and adored him, I wanted desperately to believe this time was different. The doorbell chimed at 6 o'clock sharp. Timothy stood there in a tailored jacket, his smile as wide as when he was a boy holding a prize ribbon from the county fair. Beside him was Evelyn. She was small, elegant, with the kind of posture that suggested ballet training and eyes that sparkled like polished glass. She extended both hands to me. "Mrs. Anderson," she said, her accent soft but precise, "Timothy has told me so much about you. It is an honor to meet the woman who raised such a wonderful man." Her words were warm, her grip firm, her smile radiant. I felt my defenses soften. Perhaps, I thought, this was finally the woman who would stay. Dinner went smoothly at first. Evelyn asked thoughtful questions about the old photographs above the fireplace. She praised my roasted chicken and the cranberry tarts I had baked from a family recipe. She even helped clear the table without being asked. Timothy watched us with shining eyes, his heart already surrendered. Then came the moment that shattered the illusion. Timothy excused himself to take a work call in the study. Evelyn remained in the dining room with me, sipping wine. She received a phone call of her own. Believing she had privacy, she answered in French, her words tumbling fast and careless. She did not know that decades earlier I had worked as an au pair in Lyon, learning enough French to hold my own. My fluency had faded, but the meaning of her words was unmistakable. "Maman," she said into the phone, her tone sharp, "the old cow is harmless. She is desperate to keep her son happy. Once we are married, she will be easy to manage." I froze, my hand still on a dinner plate, my breath caught in my throat. Old cow, harmless, manage. Evelyn continued, unaware of the dagger she had thrust. "The house is larger than he described, and yes, the family assets are considerable. Americans are sentimental about inheritance. Once I have the marriage certificate, the green card is simple. 2 years, then divorce, and I am free to live as I please." The plate slipped from my fingers and shattered against the kitchen floor. Evelyn appeared instantly, her face a mask of concern. "Mrs. Anderson, are you all right?" she asked, bending gracefully to help me pick up the shards. I forced a smile, though my hands trembled. "Just clumsy. These old hands are not what they used to be." She laughed softly, touching my wrist with mock tenderness. "Please, let me do this. You have been so generous already." Her performance was flawless. To Timothy, who returned moments later, she looked like the perfect daughter-in-law, helping his mother clean up broken dishes. He beamed at the sight, completely unaware of the venom I had heard only minutes earlier. "Look at you two," he said, sliding an arm around her shoulders. "Already acting like family." Evelyn smiled sweetly, pressing her cheek against his chest. "Your mother is wonderful, Timothy. I feel very lucky." But I was no longer fooled. That night, as I stood alone in the quiet kitchen, the broken porcelain gone but the echo of her words sharp as glass, I whispered to myself, "They think I am an old cow. They think I am harmless. They have no idea who I really am." For more than 4 decades I had risen at dawn, kneaded dough with aching arms, balanced books, signed contracts, and built a bakery empire from flour and sugar. I had faced suppliers who tried to cheat me, bankers who doubted me, and competitors who wanted me gone. I had buried a husband and kept our family together. Harmless? No. This battle had just begun. Sleep did not come easily that night. I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan, hearing Evelyn's voice repeat in my mind, "The old cow is harmless." 2 years, then divorce. Those words cut deeper than any insult I had faced in my bakery days when competitors sneered at the woman with flour on her apron. This was different. This was my son's future on the line. At dawn, I shuffled into the kitchen, brewed coffee strong enough to keep me upright, and sat at the oak table surrounded by the records of my life. After Robert died, I had kept everything neat: insurance policies, investment accounts, documents from the bakery sale. I ran my fingers across the folders, knowing Evelyn had already calculated the worth of what Timothy might one day inherit. She had targeted us not for love, but for numbers. The house alone was valued at more than $1.5 million. My accounts, after decades of work, totaled over $7 million. And the engagement ring Timothy planned to offer her was a family heirloom, a diamond set in platinum, worth $250,000, passed from my grandmother to my mother, to me, and someday to him. Evelyn had sized us up in one evening. She was not a woman stumbling into romance. She was a professional predator. Timothy called around mid-morning, his voice light and cheerful. "Mom, thank you again for dinner. Evelyn could not stop talking about how wonderful you were." I bit back the truth that wanted to spill out. "She is lovely, sweetheart. I can see why you are taken with her. I think I am going to propose soon. Maybe by Christmas." Christmas? Only weeks away. My stomach clenched. That sounds wonderful. Have you thought about how you might do it? As he rambled about romantic plans, candles, snow, a surprise proposal, I calculated timelines in my head. If they married quickly, she would file for a green card by spring. 2 years later, she could divorce him with permanent residency secured. 4 years, citizenship. By then, she would have drained him dry. When the call ended, I sat in silence, hands wrapped tightly around my coffee mug. If I warned him now, he would not believe me. He was blinded by infatuation. I would be painted as the bitter old widow who could not accept his happiness. No, I needed proof. That afternoon, I drove into town to meet my niece, Emma Lee. Emma was 34, sharp-minded, and worked in visa services for the government. We met at a small cafe where she ordered green tea and gave me a knowing look. "Aunt Shirley," she said, "why do I have the feeling this is not just a family lunch?" I told her everything: the overheard phone call, the cruel words, the calculated plan. Emma listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with every detail. "There are red flags," she admitted finally. "The rushed timeline, the financial motivation, the lack of background. It matches patterns of marriage fraud we see all the time." "There is a manual for this sort of thing?" I asked. "Several," she replied dryly. "These people know exactly which buttons to push. But remember, knowing is not the same as proving. Without evidence, Timothy will only resent you." Her words rang true. I stirred my coffee, feeling the weight of helplessness. "What would you do if it were your brother?" I asked quietly. Emma considered. "Gather proof, document everything, and be ready for the possibility that you cannot stop the wedding, but you might stop the damage." That evening, I called an investigator recommended by Emma. His name was Ethan Gelborough, a man in his mid-50s with the look of an accountant rather than a detective. No trench coat, no fedora, just calm eyes and a quiet voice. "The best investigations," he said as we sat in my kitchen, "are the ones where the subject does not even realize she is being watched. Give me a few weeks, and I will know who this woman really island." I handed him a photograph of Evelyn, taken at dinner. Her perfect smile stared back at me, but now all I saw was deception. As Ethan gathered his files, he paused at the door. "Mrs. Anderson, one thing you should prepare for. If she is as practiced as you suspect, this will not be her first time." The words stayed with me long after he left. I looked around my quiet home, at the framed photographs of Timothy growing up, at the worn recipe cards from decades of baking, at the ledger where I had tracked every penny of the business that built our fortune. This was what Evelyn wanted to plunder. This was what Timothy might lose. I whispered into the silence. "You think I am harmless? Then you do not know me at all." Ethan Gelborough did not look like the sort of man who uncovered secrets. His sandy hair was thinning, his wire-rimmed glasses perched low on his nose, and he carried himself with the careful manner of a man who balanced numbers rather than tracked criminals. Yet his quiet presence filled my kitchen with a sense of competence. He began his work the very next morning. For 2 weeks, I heard little from him. Timothy called often, his voice bright with plans for holiday proposals, while Evelyn continued to charm him with dinners, gifts, and soft laughter. Each time I spoke with my son, I swallowed my fear and played the role of supportive mother. Inside, though, I counted days, hours, minutes. Finally, Ethan phoned one crisp afternoon. "Mrs. Anderson," he said, "we should meet in person. I have information." When he arrived, he carried a manila folder so thick it bulged at the seams. He spread photographs, printed emails, and official documents across my dining table. "Let us begin with what we know for certain," he said calmly. "Evelyn Lamb is not who she claims to be. The name is an alias." My heart thudded. "An alias? Are you sure?" "Absolutely. Her legal identity is Nicole Roberts. She entered the country 8 months ago on a tourist visa. The address she listed on her entry forms leads to a short-term rental that she vacated after 6 weeks, the same week she met your son." I clenched the edge of the table, fury rising like fire. "So she came here hunting?" "Yes. And the pattern is disturbingly consistent. Prior to using the name Evelyn Lamb, she posed as Marie Fontaine in Colorado and Christina Marsh in Nevada. Both marriages lasted less than 2 years. Both ended in divorce settlements that left the husbands with debt while she walked away with significant assets." He slid 2 photographs toward me. The first showed her outside a courthouse in Nevada, her arm linked with a man at least 10 years older than Timothy. The second was a newspaper clipping from a small Colorado town announcing the wedding of Marie Fontaine to a local businessman. "They were marriages of convenience," Ethan explained. "Quick romance, whirlwind ceremony, then calculated divorce once financial entanglements were secure. She walked away with more than $500,000 from those 2 cases alone." I stared at the images, nausea curling in my stomach. "And now she has set her sights on Timothy." "Correct. Based on her history, she targets men who are generous, emotionally open, and financially stable. Your son is a textbook case." Ethan placed another sheet before me, a chart listing assets. "From what I have gathered, Nicole has siphoned more than $4.5 million across 10 families in the past 5 years. She is not simply an opportunist, she is part of a larger network. These people provide her with fabricated resumes, staged family members, even actors to pose as parents when necessary." The words chilled me more than the winter wind outside. I thought of the polished couple who had introduced themselves as George and Virginia Lamb. Their perfect manners suddenly seemed like rehearsed lines in a bad play. "What do we do?" I whispered. Ethan folded his hands. "We keep watching. We gather irrefutable proof. Then we involve the proper authorities. Immigration fraud of this scale will attract federal attention. But timing is crucial. If we move too early, she will vanish. Too late, and your son will be married." I rubbed my temples. "Timothy wants to propose by Christmas." "That gives us less than 3 weeks," Ethan said. "I will accelerate my work." "But Mrs. Anderson, you must continue as if nothing is wrong. If she suspects you, she may change course." The thought of pretending kindness to that woman nearly broke me, but I nodded. For Timothy's sake, I could wear the mask a little longer. That evening, Timothy called again. "Mom, Evelyn's parents are coming soon. I want you to meet them. I think once you do, you will understand how special She Island." His words twisted the knife deeper. "Parents? Or more actors in this cruel theater?" "Of course, sweetheart," I said softly. "I look forward to it." When I hung up, I stared at the folder Ethan had left behind. Photographs of strangers' weddings, divorce decrees, bank transfers. A trail of shattered families leading straight to my doorstep. I pressed my palms against the table and whispered to the empty room. "You picked the wrong family this time." For years, people had underestimated me. Vendors thought they could shortchange me on flower deliveries. Bankers doubted I could negotiate loans. Competitors laughed at a woman running a bakery chain, but I had outlasted them all. Now a new predator had come, cloaked in charm and foreign elegance. She thought I was an old cow. She thought I was harmless. She had no idea how dangerous a mother could be. The first snowfall of December drifted across the yard like powdered sugar shaken from a baker's hand. Timothy called that morning with excitement bubbling in his voice. "Mom, Evelyn's parents have arrived from overseas. They want to meet you tonight. Isn't that wonderful?" Wonderful was not the word I would have chosen. After Ethan's revelations, I knew this introduction was part of the script. Still, if I wanted more proof, I had to play along. By 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Evelyn stood on the porch in a fur-trimmed coat, glowing as if she were walking a runway. Beside her were two older figures, a man and a woman, both impeccably dressed, their accents polished, their smiles broad. "Mrs. Anderson," Evelyn chirped, "may I introduce my parents, George and Virginia Lamb." George stepped forward, bowing slightly before kissing my hand. "Madam, it is a privilege to meet you. We have heard so much about your fine son." Virginia clasped me in a warm embrace, her perfume heavy with expensive floral notes. "At last, the family's together," she said brightly. I guided them inside, offering wine. They moved with the confidence of performers who had rehearsed their lines. Every gesture was graceful, every smile practiced. Over dinner, they praised everything: my cooking, the house, even the framed photos of Timothy in his college years. George claimed to be a retired teacher, Virginia, a former government worker. Their stories, however, wavered. George spoke of teaching literature but stumbled when I asked which authors he preferred. Virginia described a government post yet contradicted herself twice in the same conversation. I sipped my wine slowly, masking my observations with polite nods. When Timothy excused himself to fetch dessert, I seized the moment. I switched into French, rusty but serviceable. "Votre accent est intéressant," I said lightly. "Your accent is interesting." Their eyes flickered, just for a second. Evelyn's smile tightened. "Ah, you speak French, Mrs. Anderson?" George asked too quickly. His tone suddenly clipped. "Just a little," I replied, letting my voice drip with innocence. It has been many years since I worked in Lyon as a young woman. But I do remember enough to hear the difference between Parisian tones and those from Marseille. Virginia's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Evelyn jumped in with a laugh that sounded more like a warning. "My parents' travels have softened their accents. It can be confusing, yes?" I smiled back, pretending to accept the excuse. But inside, my suspicion hardened into certainty. These were actors, nothing more. Later, as coffee brewed, I excused myself to the kitchen. From the doorway I listened. They spoke French freely now, believing I was out of earshot. "She is not as naive as we thought," Virginia murmured. "Be careful with details." "Do not worry," George replied. "The son is completely taken. The mother cannot stop what is already set." I gripped the counter until my knuckles whitened. Proof. Clear, undeniable proof. When I returned, they had resumed their cheerful masks. Timothy, carrying a tray of cups, looked happier than I had seen him in years. "Isn't this wonderful, Mom?" he said. "Our family's together at last." "Indeed," I answered, setting the cups down. "It feels almost like a play. Everyone knows their part so well." Evelyn's eyes narrowed just slightly, as if she sensed the double meaning. The evening ended with polite goodbyes and promises of future gatherings. George kissed my hand again, Virginia clasped me tight, and Evelyn beamed as though nothing were amiss. Once the door closed behind them, I leaned against it, exhaling hard. My heart raced, my stomach twisted. The performance had been nearly flawless, but I had heard the truth beneath their lines. I called Ethan the next morning. "You were right. She has accomplices. Parents. Rehearsed. Professional." I heard them slip. "Good," he said. "That is the crack we need. Keep documenting. We are building the case piece by piece. Remember, the key is timing. Too soon and she vanishes. Too late and she marries your son." As I hung up, I gazed out at the snowy yard, the bare branches etched against the sky. They thought they had written the script. They thought I was only a prop. But I had run my own business for 4 decades. I knew how to outplay liars, cheats, and thieves. Let them keep performing. Soon enough, the curtain would fall. The next time Ethan visited, the air outside was sharp with winter. He carried another thick folder, and his expression told me before he spoke that the contents would not bring comfort. "Mrs. Anderson," he began as we sat at the dining table, "I have uncovered more. And it is worse than we expected." He spread out photographs, legal papers, and bank records. I stared at a list of names, men from different states, different ages, but each with the same hollow look in their eyes. "She has done this at least 10 times in the last 5 years, Ethan said. "The total money taken is more than $4.5 million. Property signed over, bank accounts drained, retirement funds emptied. Each story follows the same pattern: whirlwind romance, sudden marriage, divorce within 2 years, and then she disappears with her share." He pushed a photograph toward me. A middle-aged man stood outside a courthouse, shoulders slumped, face ashen. This one lost nearly $800,000 when she left. He is still paying off debt. Another photograph showed a young man with his parents, their expressions broken. This family lost their farm. She convinced him to refinance and then walked away after 18 months. I pressed a hand to my mouth, bile rising. 10 families, I whispered. 10 homes destroyed. And now she is circling your son, Ethan said gently. She has perfected her craft. She knows how to play the loving fiancé, how to recruit actors for family roles, how to disappear once she has what she wants. I stared at the pile of evidence, fury boiling inside me. How many mothers had sat where I was sitting, helpless as their sons were gutted by her lies? How many fathers had watched their savings vanish into her hands? She will not get Timothy, I said, my voice trembling with resolve. Ethan nodded. Then we must be strategic. We cannot confront her directly. We must catch her in a trap she cannot escape. That night I barely touched my dinner. Timothy sat across the table, glowing with happiness as he described a weekend trip he and Evelyn were planning. He spoke of engagement rings, of venues, of the perfect holiday proposal. "Mom, you will love her parents," he said between bites. "They remind me so much of the family dinners we used to have. Evelyn fits right in." I forced a smile, though my chest ached. "I am glad you are happy, sweetheart." Inside, I screamed. Later, alone in my bedroom, I opened the cedar chest where I kept the Anderson family ring. The diamond caught the light, brilliant, priceless, heavy with history. My grandmother had worn it through the Great Depression, my mother through World War II, I through 40 years of marriage. To imagine Evelyn slipping it on her finger made me feel physically ill. No thief would steal that legacy. Not while I still drew breath. The next morning I called Ethan. "What do we need to do?" "We need a timeline," he said. "She will push for a holiday engagement. That means a wedding in the new year. The moment they are married, she gains legal leverage. We must move before then. I will coordinate with contacts in immigration enforcement. But you, Mrs. Anderson, must continue pretending. Smile. Accept. Do not let her see your suspicion." Pretending. The word tasted bitter, but I agreed. For the next week, I played my role. I invited Evelyn for tea, praised her charm, even asked polite questions about her supposed childhood. She answered with grace, her lies woven tight, but every so often her eyes flickered, as though measuring me. She knew I was not as gullible as Timothy. Still, Timothy was blind with love. He brought her flowers, spoke of their future, even hinted at children. I watched, heart heavy, as he gave away his trust piece by piece to a woman who saw him only as a payday. One evening, after they left, I stood at the window watching snow fall over the lawn. The world outside looked clean and pure, yet I knew filth lurked at my doorstep. I thought of those 10 families ruined. I thought of the $4.5 million stolen. I thought of my son, next in line to be gutted. And I made a vow. Evelyn Roberts, or whatever her name truly was, had chosen the wrong family. She believed I was an old cow, harmless, easy to manage. She had no idea what kind of storm was gathering against her. The days crept toward Christmas, each one colder than the last. Holiday lights blinked cheerfully down the street, but inside my home, every twinkle felt like a countdown to war. Ethan visited often, always carrying new documents in his battered briefcase. One afternoon, he spread a timeline across my kitchen table. "She will expect Timothy to propose on Christmas Eve," he said. "It is sentimental. The ring, the family dinner, the holiday magic, perfect conditions to secure her green card." I folded my arms. "So we let her think she is winning, right up until the moment she is not." "Exactly. I have already spoken with Agent Andrea Lee. She specializes in immigration fraud. She will come to dinner that night disguised as a neighbor's niece. Once Evelyn feels safe, Andrea will reveal herself and arrest her." The words sent a chill through me even though the oven was running full blast with sugar cookies. I pictured my dining room transformed into a stage for betrayal. "And Timothy?" I asked softly. "He will be crushed." "Yes," Ethan admitted. "At first he will blame you, but in time he will see you saved him from ruin. That is the price of protecting someone. Sometimes they hate you for it before they understand." That night I sat alone in my living room, tree lights glowing faintly. My late husband's photo watched from the mantel. "Robert," I whispered, "for 40 years we built this life. I will not let her strip it away. Help me be strong enough." Christmas Eve came quickly. I cooked Timothy's favorite roast, mashed potatoes whipped with cream, and pies from my old bakery recipe. I set the table with china passed down through 4 generations. Every plate felt like armor, every fork like a weapon. At 5:45, the doorbell rang. Andrea Lee stood there, dressed in a simple green sweater, holding a small tin of cookies. She looked like any young professional stopping by for a holiday visit, but her eyes were sharp. "Remember," she murmured, "I will wait until after the main course. Let her get comfortable. Then I move." I nodded, my heart pounding. At 6 o'clock sharp, Timothy arrived with Evelyn on his arm. He looked radiant, almost trembling with excitement. She wore a red dress that shimmered under the lights, her hair styled perfectly, her lips curved in triumph. I spotted the outline of the ring box in Timothy's pocket, and my chest tightened. "Mom," Timothy said, "this might be our best Christmas ever. If only he knew." We gathered around the table. Conversation flowed like honey. Evelyn charmed with practiced grace, praising my cooking, asking Andrea about her consulting work. She laughed at Timothy's jokes, touched his arm tenderly, played the part of the devoted fiancée to perfection. But I saw the flickers, the quick glance at Andrea when she asked about Evelyn's family, the pause before answering a question about her visa. She was alert, sensing danger without yet knowing where it lay. Halfway through dinner, Timothy rose to fetch wine. Evelyn leaned close to Andrea, lowering her voice. "And what is it you do exactly?" Andrea smiled warmly. "Government work, here and there. Paperwork mostly. You know how tedious it can be." For the first time, Evelyn's polished mask cracked ever so slightly, her eyes sharpened, calculating. Dessert was nearly ready when Andrea pushed back her chair. "Before anyone leaves, I should properly introduce myself." She produced her badge with a calm that chilled me. "Agent Andrea Lee, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Evelyn Roberts. I need to speak with you about discrepancies in your documents." The transformation was instant. The sweet, sparkling woman vanished. Her voice dropped an octave, steady and cold. "My paperwork is in order. You have nothing." Timothy froze, his wine glass halfway to his lips. "What is going on?" Andrea laid photos on the table. Evelyn with other men in other states, divorce records, financial transfers. Her real name is Brenda Gelbero. She has carried out marriage fraud at least 10 times. Total stolen, over $4.5 million. The ring box slipped from Timothy's pocket and clattered to the floor. His face drained of color. "You knew?" he gasped, eyes blazing at me. I reached for him. "Timothy, please." But he pulled away. Betrayal etched deep. "You investigated her behind my back. You lied to me." "Evelyn, no." Brenda laughed then, a sound colder than the winter night. "Poor, sweet Timothy. Did you really think a woman like me fell for you without reason?" She raised her glass. "You were nothing but a mark." Andrea's voice cut through. "Brenda Gelbero, you are under arrest." Handcuffs gleamed in the candlelight as the illusion collapsed around us. Timothy stood frozen, the weight of heartbreak heavy on his shoulders. And I, clutching the edge of the table, realized the trap had closed exactly as planned. The door slammed after the agents led Brenda away. Silence flooded the house, broken only by the faint tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. The table was still set for Christmas, candles flickering beside untouched pie, but the warmth had been sucked out of the room. Timothy stood rigid, staring at the spot where Brenda had been. His hands trembled as he bent to pick up the ring box from the floor. He turned it over once, then dropped it onto the table with a clatter sharp as breaking glass. "You knew for weeks," he said, his voice flat. "You let me bring her here. You let me believe." I reached for him, but he pulled back as though my touch burned. "Timothy, I wanted to protect you. If I told you too soon, you would not have believed me." His laugh was bitter, nothing like the warm sound I knew. "You did not trust me enough to give me the truth. You played me like she did, just in a different way." The words cut deeper than any knife. I opened my mouth to explain, but nothing came out. Andrea stepped forward. "Mr. Anderson, your mother saved you from losing everything. I know this is hard, but without her, you would be another victim." Timothy shook his head. "Maybe, but she took away my choice. That is not saving, that is controlling. They have like theirs of Apper now that tendas of Coplish." He shoved his chair back, the legs scraping across the hardwood, and stormed to the living room. I followed, heart pounding. He stood at the window, staring into the snowy night. The Christmas lights outside blinked cheerfully, mocking the grief inside. "Son," I whispered, "please believe me. Every step I took was to shield you." He turned slowly, his face pale, his eyes hollow. "Shield me? Or control me? Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? Everyone I care about just watched me get fooled. And you—" He broke off, choking on his words. "You let it happen." Tears burned my eyes. I let it happen so the truth could be exposed. I could not risk her slipping away before we had proof. If you had married her, she would have drained your accounts, sold your future, and walked away laughing. He pressed his hands over his face, his shoulders shaking. For a moment I thought he might collapse. Finally he dropped his hands and whispered, "I do not know if I can ever forgive you." The words pierced deeper than Brenda's cruelty. I stood frozen, every muscle aching with regret. Ethan entered quietly, his expression solemn. "Timothy, I understand your anger, but your mother's actions stopped a criminal who has destroyed 10 other families. That matters." Timothy's gaze darted between us, fury and grief battling in his eyes. "Just leave me alone." He grabbed his coat and strode out into the cold, the door banging shut behind him. The silence that followed was unbearable. I sank onto the couch, covering my face with trembling hands. All my careful planning, all my desperate effort, and in the end my son looked at me with the same bitterness he once reserved for strangers. Andrea placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "He is in shock. Give him time." I nodded, though doubt gnawed at me. Time could heal, or it could harden wounds beyond repair. That night I sat alone by the tree. The ornaments glowed softly, but I saw only the empty chair across from me. The chair where Robert used to sit. The chair I had imagined Timothy filling one day with his own family. Instead, I had a broken son and a house heavy with silence. I whispered into the stillness, "Robert, did I do the right thing, or did I just lose him forever?" No answer came, only the soft hum of the heater and the faint whistle of wind against the window. But beneath the crushing weight of grief, a spark of resolve flickered. Brenda's final words haunted me that Camille Dubois was real, her identity stolen, her life ruined in the process. If there was truth in that, then maybe there was a chance for redemption. For Timothy. For me. For both of us. I wiped my tears, lifted my chin, and whispered into the quiet, "This story is not over." 2 months later, the winter ice began to thaw. Timothy had not spoken much to me since that Christmas Eve. Our conversations were short, polite, stripped of warmth. I respected his distance, though every night I prayed for a path back to him. Ethan, however, had not stopped digging. One afternoon he arrived with a thin smile and a fresh folder. "You remember Brenda's last words?" he asked. "About Camille being real?" My heart tightened. Yes, I thought it was another cruel lie. "And of Yue." "It wasn't," he said, sliding photos across my table. A young woman, petite and elegant, smiled shyly at the camera. "This is Camille Dubois, 28 years old, hospitality manager, lives quietly with her parents, completely innocent. Brenda stole her identity and nearly destroyed her life." I stared at the photo. Camille looked almost like Brenda, yet there was a softness, a genuineness in her eyes that the imposter never carried. "She deserves to know," I whispered. Ethan nodded. "I have already contacted her. She agreed to come." When I met Camille at the airport weeks later, she looked nervous but hopeful, clutching her passport. "Mrs. Anderson?" she asked in a French-accented voice. "Yes," I said, reaching for her hand, "and you must be the real Camille." Her smile was small, but real. For 3 days, she stayed with me. We shared meals, stories, laughter. She spoke openly about the mess Brenda had left behind, frozen bank accounts, officials knocking at her door, neighbors whispering. "She stole more than my name," Camille said quietly one evening. "She stole my dignity." I clasped her hand. "You have it back now. We will make sure of it." On the last day, Timothy came. He had resisted every invitation, but curiosity finally overcame anger. He walked into my living room and stopped cold. Camille rose politely, her voice calm but warm. "You must be Timothy. I have heard much about you." Timothy blinked, stunned. For a long moment he said nothing, only studied her face. Then he exhaled. "You're real." "I am," she said softly. "And I am sorry my name was used to hurt you." They talked for nearly 2 hours, first stiff, then easier. I watched from the kitchen, my chest aching. When Timothy finally laughed just once, a small, surprised sound, I nearly wept. After Camille left, Timothy lingered. He picked up a photo of Robert from the mantel, studied it, then turned to me. "Mom," he said slowly, "you were right. You saved me. But it hurt. It still does." Tears filled my eyes. "I know. I wish I had found another way." He set the photo down and sighed. Camille was different, honest, nothing like Brenda. It made me realize how much of myself I gave away to someone who never existed. "That is not your fault," I said gently. "It is the fault of a woman who preyed on good men." "Unveiled." He nodded, his eyes weary but clearer than before. "I can't promise I'm ready to forgive everything, but maybe we can start over." Hope flickered in my chest. "That's all I want." Months passed. Letters from Camille arrived from France, then video calls, then plans. Timothy flew overseas, not for romance at first, but for truth. He returned, changed, speaking of olive groves, of genuine laughter, of a woman who did not need lies to shine. Half a year later, an invitation arrived handwritten in French and English. Timothy and Camille were to marry in a small ceremony among vineyards, surrounded by friends who knew the value of trust. As I packed my suitcase, I traced the Anderson family ring resting in its box. For a moment I thought of Brenda's hands almost claiming it, and a shiver ran through me, but that was the past. The ring would go to a woman worthy of it, not a thief. On the day of the wedding, as vows were exchanged beneath a golden sky, I felt Robert's presence. I heard his steady voice in my memory. "Protect the family, Shirley, no matter the cost." I had. And though the path was cruel and heavy, it had led us here to healing, to trust, to love renewed. Sometimes saving someone means breaking their heart before the world does, and sometimes, out of broken glass, something stronger is forged. I closed my eyes, let the sun warm my face, and whispered a silent promise. This family is safe now.